Hi, this is Tom Soane, and I'm asking the question right now: what is better, high risk, high return, or low risk, low return, or something in the middle? And how do you find these properties? How do you know whether they're good, bad, or ugly? How do you know whether you should buy them or not? And how do you find them? How easy are they to buy? Well, let me tell you, because I've got a bit of a theory about this. Now, this is my strategy. This is my idea of it all. So I welcome any questions, or I welcome any debates or arguments, whatever. But first of all, if you are looking for high return, high profit margins on a property, then you're probably going to get one that is high risk. And there's a lower demand for those properties because there are less people that are willing to take huge risks in property. So that's why if you do find one, then you won't have much competition to buy it. And also the ones that do come about with high risk, high return, they're easier to buy. The low risk and low return properties, they're harder to buy because there's a higher demand. So if you've got a nice, safe property investment that returns a decent yield, decent return on investment, decent profit, not massive, but okay, but it's very low risk, there's a lot of people that want to buy those properties. That's why a high number of those properties fall through, because you get more people fighting over it. So you might go to the seller and make them a fair offer and it's accepted. But because in this country we're not legally bound by an offer, until that property purchase is exchanged, then you do run the risk of someone else coming in and gazumping you, especially if it's a really good, safe property investment. That's what people want. They just want safety for their money and a return on their investment. So they will fight to get that, and property is an absolute killer when it comes to that. So cutthroat. So I've got a couple of tips for you. First of all, if you're buying a property and you haven't yet exchanged, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody the address. Don't tell anybody that you're buying anything. Don't tell anybody the estate agent you're using. And that will reduce the chances of you being gazumped. Now, I know you might think, well, it's all right to tell my friends and family, but I'll give you an example. I have an investor friend who went to buy a property, just a standard buy-to-let property, which returned something half decent. It was all right. And he was at the pub and he was telling his mates about the place that he's just buying. And then the next day, one of his mates told one of his mates, said, oh, Thingy's just buying that place over in, I'm not going to mention the name, over in so-and-so road. Yeah, my mate's just buying that house over in so-and-so road. He's buying it for 160,000. And he's going to rent it out for $850 a month. And then the next day, literally the next day, the agent phoned and said, sorry, you've just been gazumped. Someone's buying it for 161. There you go. Now, obviously there's no evidence to say that it was that guy, but it's a bit of a coincidence. The only people that he told was that. Now, there are agents involved as well. Sometimes agents do get a bit silly with that. I don't think it should be legal. I think that once an offer is accepted, no further offers should be considered unless the seller instructs the agent to replace the property back on the market. That's what I think anyway. I think it's just fair. But then you can argue with that and say, yeah, but what if someone comes in and offers $5,000 higher? Surely that's in the seller's best interests. Agreed. But what are the consequences to the buyer? What if they've made commitments and made financial investments in their lawyer, in their mortgage broker, and all of that sort of stuff? It's just not fair. So it has to be done morally. That's my opinion on it. It's a very controversial topic. Look, first of all, don't tell anybody. If you're buying a low risk property with a good return on investment, do not tell anybody. Second thing, make sure the agent does not leave the property on the market. Make sure the agent commits to you that they will not offer that property to anybody else. If you can get that in writing, then that's a very good piece of security for you. So the next thing I would say is get it to exchange quickly. Have your proof of funds, mortgage approval in principle, identification, instruct your solicitor quickly, get your searches paid for quickly, get your surveyor paid for quickly. Don't hang about. The longer you take, the more nervous the seller gets, the more likely you are to lose your purchase. Especially if you're getting it for a good deal. If the seller thinks that they can get a few extra grand, money is a killer when it comes to this sort of stuff. So do all those things that will reduce your chances. Now, high risk properties with high returns on investment have a lower demand. There are less people looking for high risk properties. Now, whether that's right or wrong, it's open to interpretation, but there are definitely less people looking for high risk properties. So when you do find a high risk property, you've got a good chance of going through with the purchase. However, watch out, because it's high risk for a reason. It's high return for a reason. Now, make sure you're calculating what the risk is. Is the risk that it's in an area of town where it's going to be a higher chance of damage to the property? Is it going to cost you, is it a leasehold property where the cost of service charge, ground rent, maintenance is high? If it is, or it's in a block of flats or something like that, check if there is any work scheduled to be done. Because if there is, say, I know they're going to re-tarmac the car park, that's going to cost each leaseholder, each owner, $5,000 each. That's on you. Are they going to fix the lift? Is the lift broken? Have they got any money in the sink fund? Ask your lawyer what that means. It's basically a fund which is saved up through your service charge to cover the cost of any things. If there's no money in that, then you will have to pay for things to be repaired. So yeah, high risk, high return, but why is it high risk? There's a reason why there is less demand for high risk properties. Now, if you want to go bold and you want to go for it, then hey, go for it. I'm not saying don't go for a high risk property, but just be wary of what they are. There's a reason why there's less demand on them. HMOs, higher risk, higher return, but higher risk. Student properties, higher risk because there's higher chance of damage. I know that's a bit stereotypical, but it's statistically correct. And you know what? That's fine. It's fine to take the risk, and I like to diversify my risk. I like to buy low risk, medium risk, and high risk. I haven't yet got any high risk, but I will be. It produces a higher amount of cash flow, and I'm going into a little bit of serviced accommodation for my high risk. Because then, if it goes well, then you get a nice big cash flow from that, but your cash flow is covered by your lower and medium risk properties. Anyway, that's just my strategy. So make sure if you are going to buy a high risk property, you know what that risk is, and make sure if you are going to buy a low risk property, you make sure that actually your risk is more so in getting the sale through. So I hope that helps. But look, what I will say is you will put more effort into the lower risk properties. You will do more viewings, you will make more offers, you will have to seek out those properties a lot more, and you will be up against a lot more competition. With higher risk properties, there actually is less of them, but there's less people buying, so you would need to do less viewings, less offers, and there's a higher chance of you getting that purchase through. So I hope that helps. Make sure you follow my podcast, The Anonymous Landlord. Just search Tom Soane or The Anonymous Landlord anywhere on any podcast, anywhere in the world. I am now global. I know, amazing. So I hope that helps. My name's Tom Soane, and this is The Anonymous Landlord.